Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast, where we highlight minority business owners and founders, and we use this platform to shed light on their entrepreneur journey. How's it going, everybody? My name is Kenny Groom. You are tuning into the Beyond Normal podcast. I'm excited to have Olivia Owens. She is a founding member of IFundWomen. For those of you who don't know, some of you may know, that is a go-to funding marketplace for women-owned businesses and the people who want to support them when it comes to capital, coaching, and connections. You know, it offers immediate access to capital through a premium online fundraising experience. You know, access to small business grants. I know there's a lot of business owners out there looking for different ways to fund their business. Some of that funding, some of those grants come from some of the corporate partners that IFundWomen has actually procured specifically for their audience. Expert business coaches, again, on all topics that entrepreneurs need to know about their business. And the most powerful piece, I think, of that is you get access to, as a female business owner, you get access to women-owned business owners that can act as a network for you and spark that confidence and accelerate knowledge and ignite action for your business. Thanks for joining us, Olivia.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Definitely. So we are going to hop right into things because you have so much to share around what, you know, the amazing services and capabilities that you guys have at IFundWomen. So starting out, you know, just give folks a little bit of background on yourself, you know, leading into you being, you know, the GM for that IFundWomen of Color initiative.
Sure. So super excited to be here. Thanks for the amazing intro. Definitely excited to talk about all the different work that we're doing at IFundWomen. And you gave a great overview. And background on me, I was the first hire at the company within their first year of business and really helped build it up from the ground. Ultimately, we are here to create access to capital for women business owners and close the funding gap that exists. We got to IFundWomen because we are our own customer. IFundWomen is our founder's second startup. We're not afraid to talk about failure. And her team were having trouble raising capital for their business and ultimately turned to crowdfunding as a tool. And from that experience, realized this should be the first stop on every entrepreneur's funding journey to be able to prove demand for their product or service before they invest in supply. And since then, we've gone on to expand to grants with corporate partners. We have a bunch of grants open right now that I definitely want to make sure you all know about. We do expert coaching to help build the foundation. We know that as a business owner, you might have a specific expertise in one area. You can't be it. So you can work with our coaches to get that base level foundation you need to get your business off the ground. And then last but certainly not least, we know how important it is to have access to a network who understands this experience. Entrepreneurship can be a lonely road. So being able to connect with other founders who get the experience and then also get connections to people who can help you level up your business, people who have been there, done that, and can kind of show you the way. So that's a lot of the work that we're doing right now.
Appreciate that breakdown, Olivia. It can't really go, you know, it can't really go unsaid, right, around the amazing work that you guys are doing. You mentioned something in there around when it comes to funding your business, just kind of validating the idea, getting it up and going. So many times business owners now, we're in the social media age, they hear about these big $1 million checks, right, that get signed, and they're like, all right, how do I get a piece of that, right? They go to a VC, they go to have some of these conversations, and that's probably not the best place to start. And so I appreciate IFundWomen, and even more specifically the initiative that you're leading, really putting the time into. You don't need that big check, right? You know, when you're starting your business, that means a lot. Like when you're asking somebody for, you know, $1 million, $250,000, those are different conversations versus, like you said, you just need some money to get going, really validate that idea and make you have that cash flow coming in. So that down the line, when you're kind of your business is more mature, you can have that right conversation with that audience around that big check. It's okay to have that North Star, but you gotta put in that work first. So I appreciate you, really laying it out that way, because it's not always told that way when it comes to what we see portrayed in the media.
I absolutely agree with that. One of the big challenges of the story that's being told is so-and-so raised millions and millions of dollars for their business, but always like this with the fact that only 1% of companies, regardless of the gender of the founder, raise venture capital. And of that 1%, women receive 2.3%. And of that, Black and Latinx founders only received 0.64%. So it's really difficult. That's the only story that's told, because chase something that likely may not happen for your business, but that doesn't mean you can't build a really strong business. And a number that I am hyper aware of is the average revenues for a Black woman-owned business is $24,000. That's something that we can absolutely move the needle on and help build revenue-generating businesses. We think that revenue is the best funding source for your business, and it's about proving demand, making sure people actually want what you're buying, and there really is an interest in the problem that you're trying to solve, and then figuring out how can I make sure I have a strong business model so this business can thrive for years and years to come.
Thanks for that breakdown, Olivia. Sorry for the delay on my end. Technology, you gotta love it, right? But what you just said, spot on. That's the first, I would say, gem. I think that's the earliest we've actually had a gem ever dropped on our podcast. So we are off to an amazing start. So I wanted to dig in a little bit around how it got started and sparking what sparked the idea. I know you mentioned, you guys have that founder pedigree within your organization, from the CEO on down, and even for the initiative that you're doing. I know in January of last year, I believe in 2020, I can't believe 2020 went by so fast, but that was when you actually launched the IFundWomen of Color initiative. So I wanted to dig a little bit on, what you were seeing in the market, or just the feedback you were getting from, founders, where you thought that, in 2020, that was the right time to start an initiative like this, with products and services that are tailored for that audience.
Sure. And I think it's important to know that we launched IFundWomen of Color in January without even knowing the pandemic coming. But ultimately, over our 3 years in business, we hustled to create the products and tools that women entrepreneurs needed to raise capital, and leveraging our crowdfunding platform to be able to do that. And we looked at the numbers and recognized that although the majority of our community, women of color, they represent 30% of the funding volume being raised. And so we had to take a step back and wonder, okay, well, what are the unique challenges or obstacles that's creating this deeper hesitation for women of color to actually launch and execute a campaign? And so what I recognized is crowdfunding is you leveraging your network to raise funds for your business. So if you feel like you don't have a strong network that you can turn to for support, it feels like an inaccessible tool. And then the other piece of it is there is a certain level of vulnerability that comes with crowdfunding and asking for help. It kind of flips everything that you've been taught on its head by showing that vulnerability, saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. Can you help me? And that can be a really uncomfortable conversation to have if you're not familiar with it. And if you've never seen people who look like you do it, then it can be difficult to see yourself through that lens. And so we wanted to build a platform, and IFundWomen of Color, that made crowdfunding more accessible, gave us a space to have those conversations about what's getting in your way, giving a space to build up that network if you feel like you don't have it. And then we've also been able to work with amazing partners, like Caress was our founding partner with a $1 million investment into the community to put grants and funnel debt-free capital into the hands of these founders. And I'm proud to share that in our first year, we were able to take the cumulative funding volume for IFundWomen over the past 4 years up to 51% women of color, and 49% white women. And so I think that's just such a huge testament to when you see a problem, it doesn't take a ton of money. It doesn't take an overwhelming amount of work to just be able to address it. We know that the majority of new businesses being started are by women of color. And so we need to make sure that our products, tools, and services are working for them. And so really, really proud of what we were able to do in that first year.
Thanks for that, Olivia. And one thing I will say, I actually went back and watched the video of you announcing that. And let me tell you, if you haven't watched it, you need to watch it, because the elements, it was just like everything was like against that announcement. But you made sure in that moment, Olivia, like you stepped up and you launched it. And like you said, it's kind of like you guys didn't know COVID was going to happen. But like, wow, like a year like what we had in 2020. It was right on time for those kinds of resources, because business owners were looking for that. And so many business owners, like you mentioned all the numbers, so many business owners and under, represented communities, they had to close their business down because they couldn't maintain. So having just that much more of a resource out there at that time is a really big deal. But I just wanted to give you kudos on braving that cold weather. I'm from the Northeast. Yes, I'm from the Northeast, so I understand the wind chill is a real thing. But you did an amazing job, just taking all the elements in and making sure that the folks understood the product and the services that you were putting together for the year. So you spoke to a lot of stats there. So I want to dig a little bit into kind of you running the business, like you building this out. What's something that you learned throughout building out this initiative? Like what's that one thing you wish you would have knew like back January 2020 when you were just starting it? Like what would be that one that one takeaway where if you had it at the moment in January 2020, maybe the program or initiative would be that much further along?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm going to take a bit of a different approach. I think that I wish I have understood that you don't have to have all the answers to be able to launch something. I've learned so much in this past year. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is I don't need to guess what our community needs. I need to give them the space, the platform, the opportunity to tell me what they need so I can leverage the expertise tool I have to help meet their needs. And so much of building out this platform has really been about, okay, well, what do you guys need? Let's try this out for 4 months and see if it's working. If not, we can pivot to something else. Oh, you want to hear from this person? Let me bring them in. It doesn't work in this format. And so I think back in January, I was very caught up in, well, what does it look like? How does it work? How do we make sure it's successful? And what I've learned in running it is it's really been about letting the community guide us. And I think something that I heard recently that I think is absolutely brilliant, something entrepreneurs need to be thinking about. If you can't find your target customer before your product or service exists, they're not going to materialize after it does. And we had the customers, and all we needed to do was build the product that met their needs and let them guide us through that.
Appreciate that there. Like what you just said, another gem around, just like you don't need everything figured out initially, but like you said, it is very important to know who your customer is, and you can know that beforehand, right? Before you actually have a product, there's probably somebody with a pain point, somebody with like some discomfort that's gonna spark the idea, that solution that you bring to market. So spot on there. We actually got one of our partners who actually just chimed in. She Transact. They're doing a similar initiative around women's empowerment, making sure that from a resource perspective, founders, they put in the chat, we love to collaborate with IFundWomen. Definitely gonna make sure that we connect them with you guys after this conversation, and that's what this is all about. You putting kind of that energy into the air. I'm so excited around the collaborations that happen once that energy is in the air and people start getting the ideas flowing. So appreciate She Transacts, the founder of that organization, chiming in there. Now I want to dig into kind of the meat. I call it the meat and potatoes of kind of the conversations that we had in 2020. The conversations that we had in 2020, a lot of the conversations were around gender and racial inequalities. How specifically did those conversations, those discussions around funding, around gender and racial inequalities, like how did it help or maybe take away from, building more funding opportunities for female owned and operated businesses?
Yeah, I mean, so we know minority businesses were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And so there was a very, very desperate and immediate need for alternative funding sources. And so we saw many women of color turn to crowdfunding as a tool to be able to do that. And they were able to raise funds successfully in the pandemic. And so again, we were kind of in a position where we had already built the tools. We already had the education, the resources, and we just needed to focus on getting the word out there to these entrepreneurs that these resources were available. And then we were also able to work with some amazing partners to be able to infuse capital into their hands as well. We were able to do, I already mentioned Caress, but with American Express, we were able to work with them on their 100 for 100 initiative, where they did 125K grants into Black women-owned businesses. And I want to again double click on the fact that the average revenues for Black women-owned businesses is 24K. So 25K is game-changing money for these businesses coming at the end of a year where they saw their revenues just decimated. So I think that we also, with our community, had to create the space to have those hard conversations. A lot of the talks that we were having were around, okay, well, there's all this support around about funding our businesses and so on, but how do we make sure that this support is sustainable? Are people still going to be talking about this a year from now? And how do we make sure that we're positioning our business in a way where we can not just survive, but thrive in the time to come? And so there's a lot of uncertainty that came with that, but it was really about just having open dialogue with our community, connecting them with each other. That was a big, big piece of understanding that you're not alone in this. And then also just making sure that the resources were available to them so that they could leverage a tool like crowdfunding to get through.
Thanks for that, Olivia. You mentioned the crowdfunding. I think in terms of we heard a lot around the different funding options that founders in our community, underrepresented founders, were hearing. Just to back up your point, I think a lot of people were saying, go the friends and family round, for example, or like that, like you said, and that's not a viable option for us in certain instances. So I appreciate you bringing up that crowdfunding, kind of going to some of these different platforms and trying to see, if people can really, you almost got to sell, you're almost selling yourself, right? You're putting yourself out there in terms of, getting it's got to be a similar experience, I would think. Maybe you can give some insights to, is it a similar experience, I guess, when going through crowdfunding for some of the founders that you guys work with versus, that VC route or some of the other routes? Like, how has that experience, I guess, been for some of those founders as they've gone through that crowdfunding exercise?
So there are definitely similarities. We've built out what we call the IFundWomen method, which are the 4 steps that we take entrepreneurs through in advance of launching their crowdfunding campaign. It starts with the pitch, getting clear on the problem that you're solving and how your product or service solves that problem, which you're building your pitch deck when you're trying to get ready to have conversations with investors. The second piece is understanding the size of your network. I think so often our network is this thing that just lives in our head. We can't necessarily quantify it in some way. And so we take our entrepreneurs through the exercise of mapping out their network, actually going down and saying, okay, here are the people who are in my network who I think I can get to invest in this campaign. Here are the different buckets of my network from my friends, family, professional connections. And then also seeing where the gaps in my network. Is my target customer actually in my network, or do I need to go out there and join some communities where I can meet them, or strategic partnerships? Do I have the people in my network who I could leverage for sponsorships or event partnerships or things like that? Just getting a clear sense of your network and where you need to go with it. The third piece, so we're rewards-based crowdfunding. So you're selling your products, services, content, experiences in exchange for cash for your business. No equity exchanged on our platform. And so it's about crowdfunding is really sales and marketing. So it's about selling things to the people you know that they want to buy. And I think the flexibility that crowdfunding gives you is there are going to be some people in your network who are in your target audience. So they're going to want to get access to the product or service that you're offering, but there are going to be some people who aren't in your target audience, and you can add rewards that would speak to them. So let's say your friends and family love doing virtual yoga with you. So you sell them some virtual yoga sessions through your campaign, or a lot of your friends are entrepreneurs. And so you'll do website or social media audits for them, leveraging your skill set and expertise to add value to the people in your network to ultimately raise the funds that you need for your business. That's how we think about crowdfunding. And then the last piece is just your marketing strategy. So it can take 6 to 7 touches to get somebody to actually contribute. And so figuring out what those 6 to 7 touches are going to be. You're going to be posting on social media. You're going to be sending emails. You're going to have to do that one-on-one outreach. And it's just figuring out how you can make sure that you're making those connections and following up with people to make sure they contribute. We like to say there's a roller coaster with crowdfunding. You're going to see the highest contributions at the beginning and at the end, and then you gotta manage that in between, leveraging the network map. But we've built out an entire method with a playbook that's an Excel sheet that you can get as a free download if you go to IFundWomen's Instagram account. And then we also have a free crowdfunding e-course, a video course that walks you through it. So we want to make that information as accessible as possible, because the biggest challenge that we have is people don't understand how crowdfunding could make sense for their business. And so a lot of what we do is education.
Appreciate that breakdown there. We actually had a question pop up around some of the campaigns from She Transacts. How long does IFundWomen recommend prep work in terms of getting ready for a campaign?
It really depends you've already done for your business so far. So if you have your pitch, if you understand who your customers are, and you kind of have your assets designed already, you could get it done in 4 to 6 weeks. But we really see the steps that you take to prep for a crowdfunding campaign as parallel to the steps that you need to be taking the foundation for business. So it's really a matter of what have you already gotten done for your business. If you're in that earlier stage, you don't have your website yet, you don't have your social channels built up, I'd recommend a little bit more prep time so that you can build the audience you need to ultimately raise funds from.
You heard it from the best, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the things, as I was going through the site, that I appreciated a lot of this game that you're giving up, Olivia, is free. Right. So I actually saw that there's like a downloadable free e-course when it comes to like you mentioned, that whole crowdfunding life cycle, if I want to call it that, because there is some sales and some marketing that goes into it. But at least getting started, you guys are giving this group of business owners, a fighting chance by giving them some resources so that they can go into it. And then I know in terms of follow up, you guys are pretty open as well in terms of keeping that dialogue going with the founders as well. But again, free. I'm all about free resources. Even with bootstrapping something like a podcast, you got to think of those ways how you can get it up and running for as little as possible. And then, like you said, like you've been saying the entire time, Olivia, figure out how to monetize, figure out what that pain point is that you want to bring to your audience. So I appreciate that. But free is always good. guys. I can't tell you how I appreciate an organization is built out, and as IFundWomen, having those resources available for a business owner, because that can be a real game changer. Just having something at the beginning of your journey to get you started. All right, so this next question, we actually came up with this question along with our sponsor for our second season. Our sponsor is Valorit. They are a female-owned logistics company. Brooke Sinclair is the CEO. She's been an amazing partner. But as we were having our initial conversations for the season, we came up with this idea of world domination. It was one of the things we came up with, right? And so I want to ask for you specifically for the IFundWomen of Color initiative. What does world domination look like for this initiative and for you in 2021?
Sure. I just have to shout out Brooke. She is in IFundWomen of Color. Huge Brooke fan. And I mean, world domination for us is all the money for all the women now. Like as much funding as we can drive into the hands of women of color entrepreneurs, that's our number one KPI. That's what we're working towards. And leveraging amazing partners to be able to do that. I think that brands have really stepped up in a great way to become their own type of alternative funding source for these entrepreneurs. And so we are hustling to get as many women into the community, get them trained up on crowdfunding. Right now, we're going through we're working with Caress on the Dreams to Reality Fund program, where we're taking 75 women through an accelerator experience to coach them through prepping and launching and executing campaigns. And so as much of that as we can do is world domination for us.
All the money. I'm going to put that on this. Yep. She transacts, love Valorit. You mentioned Brooke. Olivia, she has been a great partner for us. Yeah, I am. It is true, guys. It is true. I've seen it. And all the money, that's the goal. So we want to make sure, on our platform, Olivia, that we write these things down at the end of the year. I can't wait to just have that complete list as all the founders and entrepreneurs and just game changers like yourself. As we have these conversations, I'm going to write, have all this on the wall. I'm going to figure out how to put it in a format so we can check in and see how world domination is going for the businesses. But all the money, that's a great one to have. I appreciate you sharing that. All right. So next up, in terms of, what can people look forward to? What can people look forward to for the rest of the year in terms of the initiatives and just the suite of tools that you guys are offering to women of color?
I'm about to dump a ton of resources onto everyone. So make sure you have the information out. But if you follow us on Instagram, you'll be able to stay in the know. So right now we have 3 different grant programs running. One with Visa for Black women doing businesses, one with Visa for a business, one with Jane Walker for entrepreneurs in a bunch of different sectors. So head to ifundwomen.com/grants to find out all of our open programs. We also have the Caress IFundWomen of Color Virtual Summit coming up next Thursday, where we will be sharing the results of some of the research that we've been doing, and also celebrating and highlighting the resilience and grit of the women of color in our community and what they've been able to accomplish despite the impacts of the pandemic. And then we have free workshops on our platform all throughout the week. If you head to ifundwomen.com/workshops, you can get coaching around how to build a sales funnel, how to set up a Shopify website, how to make the ask, how to get over your limiting beliefs to be able to make the ask to get the funding that you need for your business. We're always working to get more and more grant programs up there. So we have a ton of different resources available that our entrepreneurs can take advantage of. We also have a free Slack network that you can join. One of the key things for our community that we understand is having access to a network of entrepreneurs can be so crucial. So if you're looking for a community, make sure you check out our Slack network. And that's a space where you can, have you ever set up a podcast? How do you get brand partnerships? You can ask those questions that you may not know, but there's somebody else in there that may know. And my biggest thing for IFundWomen of Color in building it is I want to teach women of color how to leverage each other to get further faster. We all have such a wealth of background and expertise. And if we are sharing that information, sharing the wealth, it's only going to better serve us as a whole as we try to move the needle on these numbers, overcome the systemic barriers that are in front of us, and ultimately capital need for businesses.
Appreciate that, Olivia. And you just really broke down, how folks can interact. There's so many resources as I just went through the site. It's one of those things where you can just keep clicking, right? You find one thing, you dig into it. And those are the kinds of resources where, people can get a lot of value out of it. You just got to put some of the time and energy in. So I wanted to switch things up just a little bit. It looks like we had a couple folks who are actually joining us on the Clubhouse stage here. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions that you would like to ask of Olivia. We have two people on stage right now that I want to make sure we spend some time, answering either their questions or just seeing what comments they have. First up, we have Tanisha. Tanisha, are you there?
In a space where it was literally the beginning of COVID, it was the beginning of quarantine. We were launching a brick and mortar space. So everything was just like wrong in that span of time. And to just have the support and assistance of people who've gone through so much of it, to learn how to actually make the ask of people who are in your network, and to pivot has been phenomenal. So just more of a comment about the experience, having gone through it myself. There was another thought I had that slipped my mind, but I'll definitely chime in if that comes up again. But all in all, yes, it was that I also did receive a grant from American Express, which was incredible. So the grant that Olivia was talking about, the 100 for 100 program, I'm a part of that. And again, just to be in a community where you're working to build your business with very little resources, and to even be among this group of women who have access to things like this, that can be completely game changing, because it definitely gave us the ability to stop thinking about how much more money we can raise, and to really shift the focus on, okay, we have enough money to actually do something with it now that can allow us to generate our own revenue. So it's just been really amazing to be able to have that kind of shift in pace from being a part of this community.
Thanks for the testimonial, Tanisha. It's great having Olivia on stage, but then you're the one who you're the end recipient of that value. So that comment, is spot on. We appreciate the feedback. Olivia, is there anything else you wanted to add?
First,
So I'm excited to see what you're able to make happen with this capital that you received from American Express. And I think the biggest thing is paying forward those learnings as you go through it. Entrepreneurship is a never-ending learning journey. And the more that we can educate each other on what didn't work, what we wish we hadn't done, it's only going to benefit us in the long run. So always good to see a familiar face, and thanks for sharing your experience.
Next up, we have Mo. Mo, you there?
I guess for Olivia, when we're talking about crowdfunding on IFundWomen.com, what is some of the best practices, or when we're talking ethically, what is some of the recommendations you should give any business who's looking to crowd fund on that platform? And how would we scan for potential risky investors, right? So can you talk about that?
Absolutely. And I think the one piece to keep in mind is with rewards-based crowdfunding, these people aren't getting ownership in your business. They are giving you cash for your business. And so some of the things that we coach our entrepreneurs to think about is understand that crowdfunding isn't a tool that's going to help you fund the next 5 years of your business, but it can be a tool that helps you get over the obstacle that's in front of you right now. And one of the biggest mistakes we see entrepreneurs make is picking a goal out of there. You $100,000 for our businesses, but is that actually what you need to move your business forward to the next step? And so what my advice would be, think really thoughtfully around what is the next thing that's going to be super impactful for your business. Is it building an app, and so you need to raise funds to build out a prototype? Is it demand action line, so you need to raise the funds to be able to do a minimum order? Understanding what that next step is and thinking thoughtfully about how much you need to raise. And then the second piece of it is understanding how much you can raise based on the network that you have. And if you don't have a strong network right now, what are you doing in advance to build it up? From getting out there, doing speaking engagements, engaging in communities. You want to have that audience built in advance of launching, so you know who you're able to reach out to, and you've already added value to them in some way before you're asking them for any type of investment in your business. And I think we oftentimes overthink what it means to add value to someone. A simple podcast recommendation or a book recommendation or an introduction to a person can be a way to add value, or hosting a conversation in Clubhouse where people can get access to information that they didn't necessarily know about. That's adding value. And so just figuring out how to reach your target audience, ways to add value to them in advance of launching the campaign, and then asking them to invest in you.
Cash from a potential investor into your company, you can structure terms. They may not have to own your company. Understand that, right? But if I'm on IFundWomen, what some of the best practices do you guys take to vet out potential investors? Or is it really an open source? Anyone can come and potentially invest into your company?
Totally open source, and you're the responsibility on the entrepreneur is to deliver on whatever reward they sold. So if you are saying that you're going to sell marketing consultations an hour for $100, the entrepreneur is responsible for delivering on that experience. But it's completely open. People can come and fund your business. But again, they're just buying whatever product or service you're offering through your campaign.
So the assumption.
Mm-hmm.
There's no vetting process.
I would compare it to if you were selling products or services on an e-commerce site. If somebody goes onto your website and buys your product, you don't necessarily know who they are or where they came from, but they're buying the product from you. It's the same experience.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that question there, Mo. And next up, we have, let me know if I'm saying this right. Is it Bronte? You there? Okay. Did you have a question or a comment?
For Olivia, I
actually recently started a campaign on IFundWomen. I just recently discovered you guys about a month ago. Amazing. Yeah, and I'm excited to be a part of the platform. I am a clothing designer. I have an e-commerce store. So it actually, I can base it off of what Mo was just talking about. I recently received an email after starting the campaign that was kind of, the headline was, the subject was IFundWomen campaign. It was a private investor who was like, hey, I want to give you a loan of $100K, blah, blah, blah. I started a campaign on IFundWomen. Let's start talking business. And after probably back and forth emails for about a week, I found out that it was a scam. So I kind of want to know what kind of tactics look out for things like that. Yeah. Is it normal for someone to just directly email me and say, I found you on IFundWomen? And it kind of definitely threw me off and discouraged me because I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want people to just start scammers to reach out to me to do things like this. So I want to know kind of what tactics you would take to avoid being scammed through, just a random person finding me on that website.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think ultimately, one thing that you can do
if they're looking to invest in your business, making sure they do it through the campaign. So they are putting their information in and buying it. And I think for people who reach to you, same way you do with any type of investor, do your due diligence. Look them up on LinkedIn, look them up on their website, figure out, is this a real offer? There are definitely phishing expeditions that happen, but the main thing I do is I go look up the person's name on LinkedIn to see if they're legitimate or not, and if it's worth continuing to pursue.
Okay, thank you for that advice. And I'm sorry, the first thing you said, so there is an option where people can directly message you on the platform, correct?
People should be email you from your campaign, yes. But what I was saying was, if they're interested in investing in you, then have them invest through the campaign by the reward that you're offering.
Okay. All right, that was my only question. Thanks, Olivia.
You're welcome. Good luck with your campaign.
Thank you.
Great questions, from Tanisha, Mo, and Bronte. And I think it's amazing, right? As issues or whatever you want to call it, things pop up. Olivia's right here, right, to have that conversation with you and give you some of that feedback and make adjustments for the program. So really beneficial having a leader like yourself, Olivia, here, sharing with us all the amazing just things that are going on within the ecosystem for IFundWomen. I think of it, I know it's a platform, but you guys are really building out this amazing network of female founders with some amazing businesses. So definitely appreciate that. She Transacts, chime in again around making sure you share your Real Raise story, #RealRaise with us. We love to feature some of the IFundWomen stories. So again, some resources come from this, and like you mentioned, Olivia, it could be liking somebody's product, reviewing somebody's product, a podcast like Beyond Normal Podcast. If you ever want to reach out and just you want different ways to expand the message of your brand, you got some resources out here, and IFundWomen is really at the forefront of building out some of those capabilities and some of those partnerships. So founders like Tanisha, Mo, and Bronte can actually leverage some of these tools. So appreciate everybody for giving those questions. Those were the three individuals that came up on stage. Again, if you have a question, we'll leave it open for another minute or so. But outside of that, I want to pass it to Olivia. Olivia, in terms of I always want to make sure I pass it to my guests in terms of what's that lasting thing you want folks to take away from this conversation moving forward in 2021 and building their business and beyond.
Sure. I think the biggest thing that I'd want to say is perfect is the enemy of done. The best thing you can do for your business is get it out there and test it as soon as possible, so you're not spending years and years on your life trying to build this thing that you're not sure if people are interested in buying. And the other thing, people can't help you if they don't know what you need. And I think crowdfunding is a really great exercise in opening your mind to the possibilities of that can show up for you, and recognize that you don't have to do it by yourself. No business was ever built single-handedly. And so our ability to step outside of our comfort zone, ask for the help that we need, kind of build up in a harder skin when it comes to the no's, to work to get to your next yes. Those would be my two biggest tips. And then just make sure you're following IFundWomen on social so that you can stay in the know for everything that we have going on.
After that, IFundWomen.com. Plenty of free resources and other resources on that side around crowdfunding and grants as well. Olivia mentioned there's 3 grants that are out there right now that they're actively pushing. So go get that money. She transacts, again, always making sure, they've been a partner of ours as well. Reach out. Again, appreciate Brooke for chiming in and, making some of these connections for us as well. Again, she's been an amazing partner. On that note, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So, I'll just leave out by saying, thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast, everybody. We're going to close out the room. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. We can be streamed across all major streaming platforms in addition to YouTube. Come back again.